Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun
Mantra Guru Jotoshiga Gurugan Tar Chonanayagi Kavyavandan Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vishnu Vangsha Sri Rupam Saganajatam Sahaganatam Vidangtam Sri Divam Sadvaitam Savadu Hutam Parijana Shaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakangunangscha Vanshakapadribhishta Kripashin Vipajinam Pavanam Vaishnava Namo Namaha Om Jnana Timananda Sagyana Jana Shalakaya Chukshushumuniranyan Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddha Shamana Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Shasrani Deva Guru Vanimshani Nivisheshashanori Pashtati. In the introduction to the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada paraphrases the first few verses of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Mangalacharan, and the objective of the book, Sri Krishna in Vrindavan, and obeisances to the great Acharyas, to Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Sanatana Shastri Thakur, are all offered, and benedictions to the readers that we can become like sharks and go deep into the ocean of bhakti. We also examined the overview, Grantha Vibhag, overview of the book, where Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is described in 4 different divisions, 4 waves, and how in this course for Bhakti Shastri we'll be studying the Purva Vibhag, the Eastern division, the first 19 chapters of the Nectar of Devotion. And we also discussed in the introduction Srila Rupa Goswami's definition of pure devotional service, Anyabhilashita Shunya Jnana Karmadi Anamritam Anukulana Krishna Anushalanam Bhakti Uttam. The Uttam Bhakti, first class devotion, is that which is Anna Abhilashita Shunya, devoid of other desires, for example liberation or material remuneration, etc. Anukulana Krishna, it is favorable for Krishna, it is performed in a way to please, with the objective of pleasing Krishna, it is pleasing to Krishna, is constantly performed. This is the definition that Srila Rupa Goswami gives in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and as Srila Prabhupada paraphrases, his service is favorable and always in relation to Krishna. In order to keep purity of such Krishna conscious activities, one must be freed from all material desires and philosophical speculation. So in this way, Prabhupada translates the definition of pure devotional service, and in that way, and also the other important verse which Rupa Goswami gives from the Narad Pancharatra Savopari Vinir Muktam Tat Parat Vinirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uttam. This verse is also given in the introduction, and translation to that verse you'll also find in the student materials. So we're moving on to chapter 1 of the Nectar of Devotion, the characteristics of pure devotional service. Srila Prabhupada begins chapter 1 of the Nectar of Devotion, characteristics of pure devotional service, by explaining the verse quoted by Srila Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where he's describing the principal characteristic of a pure devotee. Prabhupada's quoting from the teachings of Kapil Muni to Devahudi in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, text number 29, chapter 29, texts 11 and 12. Salokya sasti shamipya sarupyam ekatnam apiyuta diyamanam nagrinati vinam mat sevanam jana. That my devotees are not even interested in the 4 kinds of liberation, nor are they interested in material remuneration, material benefit, or philosophical speculation. They do not even beg to live in my abode with me. So having quoted these verses, Srila Rupa Goswami subsequently he composes a verse in which he describes 6 characteristics of pure devotional service, and in this chapter 1 Srila Prabhupada will explain each of these 6 characteristics, which we currently will read and examine. The verse spoken by Srila Rupa Goswami, which you'll find in your student materials and on these slides you can read, Kleshagni Shubhada Moksha Laguru Krit Sudulabha Sandrananda Visheshatma Sri Krishna Karshani Chasa. The six characteristics of pure devotional service as given by Srila Rupa Goswami are as follows. Kleshagni, pure devotional service, brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Shubhada, it's the beginning of all auspiciousness. Moksha Lagurukrit, it derides even the concept of liberation. Sudulabha, it's rarely achieved. Sandrananda Visheshatma, it automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. And Sri Krishna Karshani, pure devotional service, is the only means to attract Krishna. So these 6 characteristics are listed at the bottom of the page of the first chapter of the chapter 1, characteristics of pure devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada subsequently goes on to explain each of these characteristics, beginning with relief from material desires, which is Kleshagni. So let's examine in more detail Kleshagni. Before that, we can just consider the development of the 6 characteristics is given by Rupa Goswami, that at sadhana bhakti, Kleshagni and Shubhada manifest. At bhava bhakti, the 4 characteristics, Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha Lagurukrit and Sudulabha manifest. And at prema bhakti, all the 6 characteristics manifest. Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha Lagurukrit, Sudulabha, Sandrananda Visheshatma, and Sri Krishna Karshani. So that's also explained. So let us examine Kleshagni. The word Klesh means suffering, and Gni means to destroy. Prabhupada translates that pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Srila Rupa Goswami explains how distress is has 3 causes. Papam, sinful reactions, bija, material desire, and avidya, ignorance. And Rupa Goswami goes on to explain how the practice of pure devotional service removes each of these 3 causes, beginning with papam. Prabhupada's explaining in his purport that sinful activities are of 2 kinds, those that are mature and those which are not mature. These sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment are called mature, and the many sinful activities stored within us for which we have not yet suffered are called immature. So these 2 words explained in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Actually, Rupa Goswami quotes from the Padma Purana in this connection and examines these different stages of sin. So the immature, unmanifest, the sinful reactions which the sin has been performed, but as yet the reaction hasn't come, that's called aparabdha karma. Aparabdha karma. And sinful reactions which are mature or manifest, they're called parabdha karma. Prabhupada gives example of parabdha karma of a person that has chronic health problems, a person who has legal implications, a person who is ugly, etc. These are all examples of parabdha karma, manifest reactions to sinful activities. And there may be so many reactions which as yet we haven't yet experienced the reaction, but the karma is already awaiting us. An example I sometimes consider in this connection of aparabdha karma is like when you print. Of course, nowadays we're entering the paperless society, which is good for the trees, but everyone has gadgets. But if you're printing, sometimes at least you print and nothing happens. So then you press the print icon again, and nothing happens. Then you press it again, nothing happens. And eventually it prints. But next time you turn on your printer, you connect it to the computer, and you press print. And then from 3 weeks ago, those 3 print jobs that you press 3 times, and that paper will be printed out 3 times. So it's like that the impression is there in the software of the printer, and it's just waiting, and then after some time, when you connect again, it manifests. So similarly, there may be so many reactions that are due to us that as yet have not manifest. So that's also a type of karma. It's called parabdha. It's called aparabdha karma. So regarding the parabdha karma, that which is already manifest, Rupa Goswami, in order to address this, he quotes from the same section of Srimad Bhagavatam where Kapil Muni is instructing Devahuti. He quotes this verse, Yanyama Jaya Shravanana Kirtanat Yat Pravanat Yat Smaranat Api Kochit Sadopi Saddha Shavaraya Kalpade Kuta Punaste Bhagavan Nudarshanat. Api Sadopi, even though they're born in a family of dog eaters, Saddha Savanaya Kalpate, they become eligible to perform the Vedic sacrifices just by hearing your name or chanting your name or even remembering you. So in this way, Rupa Goswami is explaining that the current body that we have, just for example, the Western-bodied devotees are not permitted to enter the temple of Lord Jagannath in Jagannath Puri. They're not. Western devotees are not permitted to enter the temple. That's based on the principle that one's body is a manifestation of one's karmic reactions. So those who are born outside of India, in the foreign countries, that's a symptom of sinful past, and this is a fact. And therefore, due to a sinful past, they're not qualified to come so close to Lord Hari, Sri Hari in Nilachal Dham. However, this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam is explaining that the hearing and chanting process is so powerful. Yat smaranat, yat pravanat, yanyamad yat shravananu kirtanat sado api Saddha Savanaya Kalpate. Even that person who's from a very degraded background, just by hearing and chanting the name of Yam Nyama Dhyaya, your name, then that is so powerful that purifies them of that sinful birth. It purifies them of the sinful birth. So in this way, we can see on the basis of this evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam, we can see that Srila Rupa and the teachings of Srila Rupa Goswami and the example of Srila Prabhupada and other great acharyas, that Srila Prabhupada was awarding the sacred thread to those born in the Western world, Western devotees, awarding them the sacred thread, and they were also allowing them to do the fire sacrifice, the Western devotees, and this is all based on this evidence of Srimad Bhagavatam, that because they're engaged in hearing and chanting the name of Lord Hari, that has purified them of the sinful birth that they had taken, having taken birth outside of India. So a very important verse, a very important evidence Rupa Goswami has identified for us from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and very relevant for us in the mission of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. Sometime Prabhupada, there's more on this coming up in subsequent chapters, actually chapter 5, but Prabhupada would quote that Pritividyache Jota Nagaradigram Savatra Procha Hoibe Morna, that Savatra Procha Hoibe, the preaching of the holy name, Morna, Pritividyache Jota Nagaradigram will spread into all over the planet, Pritividyache Jota Nagaradigram, in as many towns and villages that we have. So Prabhupada would quote that Mahaprabhu has predicted that the Sankirtan movement will spread to every town and village all over the planet. So that means that the people, it's Mahaprabhu's prediction, but they will not become purified, they will not become devotees, they will remain degraded? No. Obviously, he's saying that my name will be spread. In other words, there will be revolution in the... Srimad Bhagavatam explains, Tad Bhagbhishaga Janat Aga Viplava, that these words of Krishna Katha, of Srimad Bhagavatam, Janat Aga Viplava, they can cause a revolution in the misdirected lives of the sinful population. So Prabhupada's explaining that if the Sankirtan movement will spread all over the world, then naturally the people will become purified and should be considered transcendental Vaishnavas regardless of their birth. So Prabhupada is explaining this in his purport, a little further down the page. One who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service has without doubt become freed from all contamination of material sinful activities. Devotional service therefore has the power to actually nullify all kinds of reactions to sinful deeds. Here's the verse from the Padma Purana, which Rupa Goswami is quoting in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and also you'll find quoted in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text number 2, in connection with Krishna's statement that Pavitram idam uttam, that Krishna consciousness is the purest. Pavitram idam uttam, the topmost pure. And in that regard, Prabhupada quotes this verse from the Padma Purana explaining how the purifying potency of Krishna consciousness, how it purifies one of all types of sins, as we'll examine when we look at this verse. Aparabda palam papam kutam bijam palanmukam kramanaiva praliyate Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam. So the translation Prabhupada gives that, as stated in the Padma Purana, there are four kinds of effects due to sinful activities. All these four effects become immediately vanquished for those who surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu and become engaged in his devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. So we can take a look at these aspects, these different types of sin, with the help of this diagram. So beginning with a papam, a sinful act is performed, and then there is a reaction. That reaction may not manifest immediately. The verse of Padma Purana explains that even before the Prarabdha karma manifests, before the actual manifestation of the sinful reaction, there is production of kutam. Kutam means a sinful propensity. In an article on the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, written in earlier Back to Godhead magazines in the 1950s, which you'll find in the student materials, Prabhupada translates kutam as a germ. And more progressed is a bijam, a specific sinful desire. So the kutam propensity means an inclination towards sin, just like Srila Prabhupada gives the example of venereal disease. Even a person suffers, still they have an inclination to perform sin. Or a thief may be punished, but still he has an inclination to steal. So this inclination to sin, this is a first result of a sinful activity. That by performing a sinful activity, it increases the actual performance of the act. The first reaction is that there's an increase in one's propensity to sin again. That's called kutam. And then there's specific sinful desires. They're called bijam. And that induces one to perform a sinful act. And then there is the aparabda. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada comments, now this is from, as I mentioned, Back to Godhead article in 1944, where Prabhupada is examining these different stages. The vices in their different stages of development are analysed herein. Palonmukam means that which we may be undergoing at the present stage of life. Palonmukam means the parabdha karma, the manifest reaction, palonmukam. Bij, vice, is the seedling, the process of our desire of different types. Kutam is prior to the stage of bijam. Here it is, in the germinating stage. Prabhupada said the germinating stage is kutam. Aparabda is a fountain source of all, and from this storehouse of all vicious life and other stages develop. And all these stages of vicious life become at once switched off by adoption of the devotional service. So the verse that Rupa Goswami is quoting from Padma Purana explains that kramanaiva praliyate. Kramanaiva means step by step, or stage by stage. Kramanaiva praliyate, complete destruction of all these types of sinful reactions. So, as distinct from a prayashchitta, atonement activity, wherein according to the seriousness of one's sinful reaction or one's misdemeanor, one can perform a prayashchitta, an atonement type of an activity or an austerity or a ritual, or give some charity, and in that way the reaction for that particular misdemeanor can be removed. This is the common practice of karmakanda. Distinct from this, Rupa Goswami is explaining that Vishnu Bhakti means Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. The simple activities of hearing and chanting about Krishna, remembering Krishna, Bhavamad, Bhakta, Madhyaji, worshipping Krishna, Manmana, thinking of Krishna, Mam Namas Guru, bowing down to Krishna. This is Vishnu Bhakti. So these simple activities of Vishnu Bhakti, they destroy all of these different types of sinful reaction. That is the sinful reactions that as yet haven't come upon us, but they're in the account. The kutam the inclination to sin, the bijam, that specific sinful desires, and the prarabdha karma means the suffering, that the disqualifications as a result of my current body and current gender, current ethnic background, current health condition, current circumstances. All of this type of disqualification is also neutralized and purified by Vishnu Bhakti. Ratatmanam. Ratatmanam means pure devotional service. It means, as we've been describing, the definition of devotional service. Particularly what we need to keep in mind here is that we can keep our devotional service on the Uttam platform, or at least on the level of practice on the Uttam platform, if we Anukalena Krishna Anu means we perform devotional service. We don't speculate some new idea of how to please Krishna. We follow the standard procedures that are taught by Guru Vaishnav, how to serve Krishna. That's Anukalena Krishna Anushilanam. And we perform that activity devoid of a desire for personal liberation or a desire for personal remuneration. It's a simple activity. So this is pure devotional service. And by practicing that, one can expect, even at the stage of sadhana, as we have explained, complete removal of all these different types of sinful reactions. And in that way, one can experience kleshagni, or relief from material suffering. Regarding ignorance, Rupa Goswami is explaining with analogy, and Prabhupada's paraphrasing, there are many, many snakes on the ground of the forest, and when a fire takes place, it burns the dried foliage and the snakes are immediately attacked. Similarly, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed. Kleshagni, material contamination, is very subtle. In its beginning, its fruition and results. And how one suffers such results in the form of distress are a part of a great chain. We already discussed that in regard that performing a sinful act actually increases one's propensity to sin again. So in this way, it was like one bound up with the chain of cycle of sinful activities. When one catches some disease, it's often very difficult to ascertain the cause of the disease. The practical injection to stop all fructifications of the seed of our sinful activities is simply engagement in Krishna consciousness. The sinful desire seed can be removed only by achieving Krishna consciousness, and this can be accomplished very easily by chanting Mahamantra, Hare Krishna mantra, as recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In other words, unless one adopts the path of devotional service, he cannot be 100% clean from all the reactions of sinful activities. So in this way, by practicing Krishna consciousness, one can very quickly experience relief from material distress. We've discussed Kleshagni, the first characteristic of pure devotional service, and along with Kleshagni, the second characteristic, Shubhadar, as Prabhupada translates, Krishna consciousness is all auspicious. These both appear at the stage of sadhana. Srila Prabhupada is explaining in his purport, Srila Rupa Goswami has given a definition of auspiciousness. He says that actual auspiciousness means welfare activities for all people of the world. Regarding this, Srila Prabhupada is explaining a little further into his purport. The Krishna consciousness movement, however, is so nice that it can render the highest benefit to the entire human race. Everyone can be attracted by the movement, and everyone can feel the result. The verse that Rupa Goswami composed, which Srila Prabhupada is commenting on in this connection, Subhani Prinanam Sarva Jagatam Anurakta Sadguna Sukham Iti Adin Yakyatani Manishibi. These different aspects of auspiciousness are described by Srila Rupa Goswami, that Sarva Jagatam Prinanam, compassion for everyone. Prabhupada's explaining that a person who is engaged in devotional service and full Krishna consciousness is understood to be the best, to do the best service for the whole world and to be pleasing everyone in the world. It's quoting from the Padma Purana. Anuraktaha, attracts everyone. Sadguna, bestows all good qualities. Down further into the purport, Prabhupada's explaining, for example, a Krishna conscious boy, even if he is not very well educated by the university standard, can immediately give up all illicit sex, life, gambling, meat eating, and intoxication, whereas those who are not in Krishna consciousness, although very highly educated, are often drunkards, meat eaters, sex mongers, and gamblers. We experience that even a young boy in Krishna consciousness is unattracted to cinemas, nightclubs, naked dance shows, restaurants, liquor shops, etc. He becomes completely fixed. He saves his valuable time from being extravagantly spent in the way of smoking, drinking, and attending the theatre and dancing, because all good qualities are automatically bestowed upon anyone who's practicing pure devotional service, as we defined a few days ago. Regarding the characteristic of Shukham, which is the final component of Shubhada that Rupa Goswami identifies, Srila Prabhupada, in his purport, he entitles this section Happiness in Krishna Consciousness, and he discusses the last aspect of Shubhada, which is happiness, Shukham. He combines that with the next of the characteristics, of the 6 characteristics, which is called Moksha Lagudakrit, that pure devotional service derives the concept of liberation. Srila Prabhupada discusses both of those in the subsequent 3 pages in his purport. So therein, Srila Prabhupada explains that the happiness which one receives from the mystic perfections, and he lists the 8 mystic perfections, as long as other types of material happiness do not compare with the happiness derived from devotional service. And towards closing the purport, towards the end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that Krishna consciousness, he quotes the verse from Prahlad Maharaj in the Haribhakti Shubhodhaya, that my dear Lord, the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj to Lord Nrsingadev, my dear Lord, I repeatedly pray unto your lotus feet that I may simply be stronger in devotional service. I simply pray that my Krishna consciousness may be more strong and steady, because happiness derived out of Krishna consciousness and devotional service is so powerful that with it one can have all the other perfections of religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and even the attainment of liberation from material existence. And in this connection, Srila Prabhupada, he quotes the incident of Srila Kolavecha Shridhar. And Prabhupada is explaining, Lord Chaitanya once revealed himself to his confidential devotee Kolavecha Shridhar and offered him any opulence he liked. But Shridhar informed the Lord that he didn't want any material opulence. This is the position of a pure devotee. So that incident was very charming, actually. This is the Astasattva Praha, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was manifesting his Bhagavata, his opulence, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to all of the Vaishnavas in the house of Srivas Thakur during the Kirtan. Mahaprabhu, he all of a sudden sat on the altar of Lord Vishnu, and he began calling the devotees to worship him. And the description of this event you'll hear in the Gaur Arati Kirtan, that all of the demigods were present there, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and holding an umbrella over Gaudahari, the demigods are performing the Arati. This went on for 21 hours, and Mahaprabhu, he called all of the devotees and he bestowed benedictions upon them. So when he called Shridhar, actually the devotees, Mahaprabhu said, bring Kolavecha Shridhar. And the devotees said, oh, who is that? And Mahaprabhu said, you go in the direction of Kolavecha's house. It was in that direction. Mahaprabhu, he pointed in the direction the devotees should go, and he said, you will hear. When you hear the loud calls of Gaudhari, or the loud calls of Hari, Hari, then you will know you are getting close to the house of Kolavecha Shridhar. And Kolavecha Shridhar, he would worship Ma Ganga. And actually he was criticized by the neighborhood residents. They would say that you worship Krishna, you chant the name of Lord Hari, but just see how poor you are, your house is falling apart, you don't have clothes, and because you're hungry at night, because you can't feed your belly, then you wail with pain at night out of hunger. But actually, Kolavechra at night time, out of love, he's calling the name of Hari and not sleeping. And in this way, the Vaishnavaya Kriya Mudda Bhujatena Abhigya, even a learned person cannot understand the activities of a Vaishnava. So Mahaprabhu said, you get to area, you'll hear the loud calls of Hari Hari, that is Kolavechra Siddha. So they brought Kolavechra Siddha. Mahaprabhu said, of course Mahaprabhu would do Leela during his Vidya Leela, during his youth. Many years before, he would spend every day, he would visit the market and he would negotiate with Kolavechra Siddha. And he would take all of the high quality vegetables. Kolavechra Siddha was dealing in the different parts of the banana plant. And Mahaprabhu would come, he would take the banana flower, the kola mocha, the different parts of the kola, the trunk of the banana tree, the kola tor for making sabji, the leaves of the banana tree for making plates. Mahaprabhu would take and he would give half the price. And of course Kolavechra Siddha is offering the proper price. And Mahaprabhu would challenge that, why are you so greedy? One day I will reveal to everyone that you're hiding all of this wealth. And this way Kolavechra Siddha would say, well, you can take how can I provide at such a price? You can take your goods from here and there. And Mahaprabhu would say, very difficult to find a good provider these days. And in this way, every day he would come and he would argue and he would just take the goods. And in this way, he would like to associate with Kolavechra Siddha, who is his pure devotee, who is so devoted to Ma Ganga. With whatever little income he acquired, he would use 50% to worship Ma Ganga. And he lived a very humble life. And Mahaprabhu was so much attracted to associate with his pure devotee, Kolavechra Siddha. Every day he would go to the market and just cause him trouble, just so that he could associate with him. And then when Mahaprabhu was sitting on the Singhasan of Srivas Thakur, and he called all the devotees and he's bestowing benedictions, he brought Sridhar, and Sridhar standing seeing the opulence of Navadip Chandra as he's sitting on the Singhasan and displaying his opulence as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he called to Sridhar and he said, take a benediction. And Sridhar said, there's nothing. And Mahaprabhu said, no, I want to bestow a boon upon you. Actually, this is the science of Archana Marg. We worship the deity with great pomp and with great opulence. And in this way, the Lord is satisfied. And He bestows benedictions. Just like if you attend Mangal Arati. Mangal Arati is very auspicious. Why? Because at that time of the morning, the Lord has just awoken and He's given hot milk, He's given payesh, sweet rice sandesh, burfi, and then the curtains open, the devotees are standing, they're glorifying the names. It's very, very pleasing. So at that time the Lord bestows benedictions. He bestows benedictions on His devotees. He wants to bestow benediction. This is the science of Archana Marg. The secret, the potency, the special wonder of the deity worship, that just by worshipping the Lord, with simple offerings of Ganga Jal and a tulasi leaf, tulasi dalamatrena, just one leaf of a tulasi plant, jalasha chulukalenava, the amount of water that you can keep in the palm of your hand, viknetam samatmanam bhaktebhyo bhaktavatsalaha. I'm so much obligated. If one offers me a dalasha matra tulasi, one leaf of tulasi, and a little Ganga Jal that you have in the palm of your hand, viknetam samatmanam, that I have to, all I can give in return is myself. You can purchase Krishna. He becomes so much indebted. And especially if we do it according to these principles of Uttam Bhakti that Rupa Goswami has taught us. If we do this simply thinking that I know Krishna likes the tulasi leaf, I know Krishna likes this water, so I'm offering it to please you. You please to accept this. Without any thinking, or without doing it for thinking of how much I'm going to be remunerated. This is pure devotional service. And this type of devotional service is so attractive to Sri Hari. He wanted to associate with Kolavetra Siddha. And when Kolavetra Siddha was saying, I don't want anything. Yeah, so we were describing when the Lord is satisfied with the worship, He wants to give benediction. So Gaudhari, he said to Kolavetra, he said, no, I want to give you a boon. I'm feeling very munificent, and I want to give a benediction to you. Ask for a benediction. I want to give you a benediction. I can make you, he said, Mahaprabhu said, I can make you the Lord of a universe. I can give you all of the mystic powers. Just say, I will give. I will take a boon. And still Kolavetra Siddha was saying, nothing I want. And Mahaprabhu said, I want to give you something. You say something. I want to give. So Kolavetra Siddha, he said, then you give me the opportunity to, life after life, to see that Brahmin boy with the beautiful dark hair tied at a knot at the top, with eyes that are like lotus petals, with a chest like that of a lion, the Brahmin thread like an antashesh draped across his chest, and he comes, and to see him and to dispute the price of the bananas and the parts of the banana plant with that Brahmin boy, you give me that, you give me the opportunity to see that life after life. So in this way, Vrindavan Das Thakur, he describes this is the quality of a pure devotee. This is the nature of love of Godhead. This is the Vaishnav Gun. And therefore one doesn't require anything. One simply wants to serve Sri Hari, and this gives one the greatest happiness. And this type of happiness can also be enjoyed at the sadhana practice stage of sadhana bhakti. So in this way, Prabhupada similarly discusses Moksha Lagudha Krit in his purport, pages 13 to 14 of this edition. That it's stated in Narad Pancharatra, as the personal attendants and maid servants of a queen follow the queen with all respect and obeisancy, similarly the joys of religiousness, economic development, sense gratification and liberation follow the devotional service of the Lord. That's quoting from the Narad Pancharatra, that verse. So the next characteristic of pure devotional service, which Srila Rupa Goswami gives, which is the second characteristic manifesting at the stage of Bhava Bhakti, that is called Sudurlabha, and devotional service is rarely achieved. The rareness of pure devotional service, Srila Prabhupada explains, and he comments in his purport that in the preliminary phase of spiritual life, there are different kinds of austerities, penances, and similar processes for attaining self-realization. But all such endeavors can hardly offer anyone devotional service to the Lord, not even if one tries for it by such processes for many, many thousands of births. And Prabhupada's explaining, he's quoting from Chaitanya Charitamrita, that only through the mercy of the devotee, Guru Krishna Kripai Pai Bhakti Lota Beach, and towards the end of Prabhupada's discussion on the topic of the rareness of devotional service, or also Prahlad's quoting from Prahlad Maharaj in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Matirna Krishnai Parato Sato Va Mito Pipatyeta Grihapratanam Adanta Gobi Vishatam Tamisram Puna Punosh Charvita Charvananam. Prahlad Maharaj explains merely by personal efforts or by the instructions of higher authorities, one cannot attain the stage of devotional service. One must become blessed by the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee of the Lord. Niskinchananam na praniti yavat mahisham pada rajobhishekam niskinchananam na praniti yavat. And Prabhupada's concluding that the purport of this verse is that the Lord easily offers liberation, but He rarely agrees to offer a soul devotional service, because by devotional service, the Lord Himself becomes purchased by the devotee. So therefore, it is sudurlabha, it is very rarely achieved. Regarding the first of the last two characteristics of pure devotional service. Sandrananda Visheshatma, that devotional service immediately situates oneself in incalculable condensed bliss. Prabhupada translates the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme. And Prabhupada's quoting Rupa Goswami, who's composed the verse, the Brahmananda Bhavedesha Chet Parada Gunai Kritai Naiti Bhakti Shukhambodhe Paramanu Tolamapi. That even if the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, Brahmananda, is multiplied by 1,000,000-fold, that's Brahmananda Bhavedesha Chet Parada Gunai Krita, 1,000,000-fold, it still cannot compare to even an atomic fraction, Naiti Bhakti Shukhambodhe, the Bhakti Shukhambodhe, the ocean of happiness of Bhakti, Paramanu Tulamapi, even Paramanu, even a minuscule drop of that. Atomic fraction of the ocean of devotional service. Tulamapi, tulam means not comparable. So that's a nice verse regarding how devotional service is a superior bliss to that of. And the final characteristic, Sri Krishna Karshani. Sri Krishna Karshani. These two last characteristics Rupa Goswami manifest at the level of prema. It attracts Krishna, and Prabhupada's commenting that to perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Radharani. And devotees in Vrindavan put themselves under the care of Radharani in order to achieve perfection in their devotional service. Being directly under the control of the internal potency of Krishna, devotional service attracts even Krishna himself. So in this way, Sri Krishna Karshani, devotional service attracts Krishna because it's under the shelter of Srimati Radharani, who's attractive to Krishna. So in this way, the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service and how they manifest are described with examples and supportive evidences in this first chapter of the Nectar of Devotion. Let's conclude the lesson with this comment from Srila Prabhupada regarding the Pandavas and how they were so dear to the Lord. He remained with those royal brothers, being attracted by their devotion, by their friendship, and by their love. That is the proof of how great this process of devotional service is. It can attract even the Supreme Personality of Godhead. God is great, but devotional service is greater than God because it attracts Him. People who are not in devotional service can never understand what great value there is in rendering service to the Lord. Srila Prabhupada Ki.